We're very honoured to have Darpan come and speak for us. He is well known in the Shire. How many people here actually have met him? Can you put your hand up? So, okay, so there's quite a lot of people who don't actually know. So in that case, I'll give a little intro because, well, Darpan's Dutch, but brought up in Australia, and he did psychology and dramatic arts at uni, Flinders Uni, and of course he did the psychology so he could work out how to get people to let him into the dramatic arts, which he did. He did a lot of theatre when he was a young man, and he also, because he's such a great musician, he was in a couple of groups. I know that one of them was called the Divinals. Such a good name, Divinals. Yay. So that was in the days of vinyl albums, I guess, a long time ago. So then, much like myself, he went in search of becoming awakened, becoming a wholesome being, becoming as enlightened as possible. And that took him, first of all, to India, where he met his controversial mystic master Osho, where we learnt meditation and many other wonderful things besides, like Tantra and Primal and all sorts of amazing, fascinating, they were great years. That was sort of in the 70s and 80s when everything was really free-spirited. And he also went to Papaji, who I remember said something to him to the effect of, "You will become awakening without the help of anything." And I only ever heard Papaji say that to one person, so he's here with us tonight. And then he got into the whole South American thing, and he has teachers and he worked with, and he has masters in all over South America, in Brazil, he has two in Brazil, one in Ecuador, one in Peru, and so he has taken the essence of their work and brought it to Byron Shire, where you can also experience it with him. And he has done 5 or 6 albums, so beautiful albums. I believe he's working on one at the moment. I look forward to that being released. There is one of his albums still in CD form that is available here tonight. How much are they?
$20.
$20 for the albums there on the front cover. So so this is part of Turning Point Talks. We do it once every month. It's the last Wednesday of the month. Next one, there isn't one because we're going to Bali. But when we come back, Narada will do one, and the last Wednesday of September on AI, and get you really up to date. I don't know anyone who knows more about the absolute beauty and benefits and the absolute threats that AI brings, but it's extremely exciting, extremely, gets you on the edge of your seat, and there is so much to understand from that is so important. So that's what's coming at the next Turning Point Talks. So please give a warm round of applause and let's welcome Darpan to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. Lovely to see everybody on a cold winter's night. Well done. I'm here to speak on a topic called Reclaiming Vision to Manifest a New Paradigm. And basically, as abstract as that may sound, it's actually a very practical kind of topic, as I will explain as we go along this evening. But before I do, I'd like to share with you a video that I made. It's a piece that I made some time ago, and it was taken up by some friends in San Francisco who were doing these 3-dimensional dome performances and presenting holographic or 3D kind of immersions within the dome. And they took this video, divided it into 3, and then invited some really amazing visual artists and sound DJs to create a show that lasted about 25 minutes. And that was during the last part of COVID, the kind of lockdown period, where it was one of the few shows that was allowed to be presented in America. And this is in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas had this special theatre where you don't have to wear glasses, you can just project 3D and you can wander through the 3D holography within the space. And they were doing like 4 shows a day, and it ran for about 3 months. Sadly, I couldn't go because of the lack of ability to travel at that time. But I want to share it with you this evening because it's going to set the tone or the foundation for what I'm about to speak on this evening. So if you'd just like to bear with me and just watch this video, it's a piece that I created in conjunction with Ben Templestep, who is a musician, and Michael Strauss, the guy who is responsible for the images. And so I hope you enjoy it. I was going to show it at the end of the talk, but I think I'd like to show it at the beginning so that I can just put what I'm about to talk about, those topics and those issues on the table. So, narrator, if you could, somebody could switch these lights off for a second, and then we can watch the video and I'll continue after that. Thank you.
We live in extraordinary times. The world is changing at such a rapid rate. It may soon be unrecognizable to most of us alive today. There appear to be no linear solutions to the moral, fiscal, and environmental crisis we face today. All attempts to handle these issues with the old mindset are doomed to an awful and protracted failure. As strange as this may seem, it is actually very good news. These are ideal conditions for the one element which promises a dynamic solution to the insurmountable problems plaguing the planet today. The radical transformation of consciousness. This is the wild card in the deck. These conditions constitute precisely the right environment needed for radical transformation. Human consciousness is notoriously asleep when things are comfortable, predictable, and certain. Ancient initiation rites always involved facing the unknown and the very real possibility of annihilation. We find ourselves at a unique point in the evolution of human consciousness. A tumultuous time of unprecedented change and transformation. What is being called for is a new vision. One which embraces coexistence and co-creation over domination and exploitation. A quantum leap in the awareness of how we see ourselves. As we experience the dissolution of the old order, it is apparent that many across the world are experiencing a new sense of empowerment, asserting the desire for peace and respect for all beings. Millions are experiencing a sense of connection and unification. This is a planet in transition. A new Earth is being born. A world nested in loving kindness, justice, peace, and a sense of oneness, of unity consciousness. As this new Earth comes into being, the associated chaos and disorder will pose some major challenges. Simultaneously, wonderful new experiences will also be occurring. People will start to be filled with the idea of awakening, of joy, freedom. more and more synchronicity will abound in our lives. Deep happiness will overflow in our lives at the strangest times. Sweet peace will steal over us for no apparent reason, as we feel the presence of a magnificent, divine self arising within us. We are in the process of a very rapid spiritual awakening. This shift of consciousness in the world and in our personal lives has been predicted for a long time by seers, visionaries, spiritual teachers, astrologers, and indigenous elders from traditions around the world. The Earth is arriving in a new part of the galaxy, just in the middle of the Milky Way. Something it does every 26,000 years. Very high frequencies exist in this part of the galaxy, and these frequencies are being absorbed into the world of matter, catalyzing a vibrational shift to lift and evolve all beings very quickly. Powerful changes are also occurring with our sun. Unprecedented coronal mass ejections, high-frequency solar magnetic winds are being released into space and flooding the Earth. The redistribution of electromagnetic fields on the Earth will accelerate profound changes in our lives. This may cause feelings of disorientation, confusion, and fear, as old patterns of negativity and limitation are released and new higher energies take hold. It seems the way to approach this time of transition with balance and ease is to prepare oneself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically to remain clear, steady, and awake. Many are being called to purpose, to assist in ushering this new transformational era of human life. It is nothing less than a dimensional shift from one modality of consciousness to another, involving the conscious ingression of higher frequencies into the third dimensional plane. We are moving towards a new world, a new level of reality in which the consciousness of love, peace, and spiritual wisdom will prevail. Once we have learned how to anchor these higher frequencies, the result will be the co-creation of a new Earth, one in which we will live in peace and harmony, one in which we will experience an all-pervading oneness with the totality of life, one in which we respect all sentient beings, where the Earth herself will be perceived as our mother. Fear, hunger, poverty, and crime will be made obsolete. Our natural birthright will be equality, justice, respect, and abundance for all. All beings will awaken to the majestic, divine, multi-dimensional beings that we truly are. Listen to your intuition as your eyes open.
Thank you very much for your focus and attention. This is just a synopsis that I want to lay on the table. I'd like to extrapolate a bit more now about what this really means. You know, we're at an end game on the planet. Can you just turn this up slightly? A little. It's not something that has just suddenly crept up upon us. It's been coming for some time. We're at an economic, religious, fiscal, environmental endgame. It's like any attempt to try and sort out the problems that we have on the planet today seem doomed to an awful and protracted failure. Einstein once said that you can never solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. So, currently today, we have lots of attempts at trying to fix the system, or improve the system, or make it better, or somehow mitigate it to get some sort of more life out of it. But my position is that it's at its end point. It's past its use-by date. It's actually no point in trying to tinker with the nuts and bolts of an old, outdated modality that is past its use-by date. It's simple as that. What is being asked for? All these symptoms of a world in crisis is in itself a clarion call for awakening. It's putting pressure upon the psyche of human beings. It's putting pressure on the planet itself, which is suffering from the burden of technological misuse and for greed and profit and separation, exclusivity. What we need to do at this point, there's no kind of systemic solution as far as I can see in terms of coming up with a new plan within the context that we are currently living today. What's been called for is a radical shift. A radical shift not just in the way that we see ourselves, but the way in which we relate to others and our environment. So what I'm saying here is there's no political solutions as far as I can see. What's being called for, what's being asked for is for us as a species to grow up, to actually graduate from being little kids running amok on a planet, not really caring or taking responsibility for what we're doing, for the consequences of our actions, nor have we been taking responsibility for who we truly are. We've been shitting in our own backyard and waiting for the next generations to clean it up. It's just such an immature attitude. So what I'm saying is there's no political or sociological or religious solutions. It's simply a process of very simply growing up. We need to grow up as a species. We need to become conscious custodians of this incredibly beautiful blue planet in the far-flung reaches of the Milky Way, revolving around this beautiful sun. We have this beautiful planet, and it's time that we've soiled it. And it's time we grew up out of that. But of course, the planet's evolution is not separate from ours. What is happening to the planet is happening to us, and vice versa. The planet's changes are creating changes in our consciousness. Our consciousness also affects what happens with the planet. So firstly, let's just look at I'd like to look at the physical crisis that we face on the planet today, besides the economic and the environmental crises that we are in. The physical changes on the planet are undeniable. You know, you have everybody talking about climate change today, and the dominant paradigm, who's mainly, telegraphing this message, is saying that we are responsible. There's a certain amount of guilt involved here, like you humans have been using too many fluorocarbons, too many hydrocarbons, and I guess the ones who are saying we've been doing it too much are the very people who've been actually exploiting the fossil fuels on our planet. Now saying humans are responsible, we've got to tax you, we've got to limit you, we've got to block the sun, and we've got to do lots of things in order to stop the planet from warming up. And this is just, when I hear this kind of narrative, it's anathema to me. because it's just a straight out lie. What I see is happening, there are as many scientists today who signed petitions who agree with what I'm about to say, as there are people who are saying that, you know, humans are responsible for the warming of the planet. So many of these scientists have demonstrated and shown that it's not just planet Earth that's warming up, so is Mars. The polar caps on Mars are melting. Venus, Mercury are warming up. In fact, the whole solar system seems to be going through a major shift. And so you go, well, there's no humans on Mars, there's no humans on Venus as far as we know, so why are they warming up as well? And, you know, like, what is the common denominator? And the common denominator, of course, is our sun. And the sun, when you tune into it, if you want to look at it in a metaphorical way, it's like the alpha male of the solar system. It's like got all its concubines and lovers, you know, in adoration revolving around it. It's the life giver, the giver of light, the giver of the source of all things that we know that are alive, is the sun. And so suddenly, the sun is starting to exhibit unprecedented behaviour in and as long as we've been studying the sun, which is about 150 years. Suddenly we have unprecedented coronal mass ejections. We're having solar winds that are being caused by these coronal mass ejections, which are basically solar flares, being pushed out into the solar system, high-speed solar winds that carry very highly charged ionized particles that are hitting our magnetosphere. And the magnetosphere is the protection that the Earth has. It's like an electromagnetic field, like a toroidal donut, that protects it from, you know, the solar radiation, harmful rays, UV rays, and so on and so forth. But in fact, this magnetosphere is being very dynamically affected. And you can see that because there's a thing called the Schumann resonance. Schumann resonance was invented by a guy called Winifred Schumann back in the early 20th century. And he measured that the Earth has a pulse. It has a frequency that you can measure. And it's usually at about 7.32 hertz. Now this pulse, this frequency, has been consistent all the time, as long as they've been measuring it. And it's analogous to, or in resonance with, the alpha wave of our brain waves. It's also at about 7.3 hertz. So it's at that relaxed, an alpha wave situation is like a relaxed, light dreaming, kind of slightly meditative state. It's not the beta state that we're in right now where you're listening and I'm talking. It's that really relaxed state. It's where some dreams happen during the night. So it's in resonance with that. So now it's been shifting and changing and spiking. It's been going up to like between 20 and 30 hertz in recent times. Even in the last week, we've had unprecedented flares. Solar coronal mass ejections. And if one of those was to directly go through the magnetosphere, it could cause an immense shift on the planet in terms of like take out all of the satellites, electrical, there's a thing called the Carrington effect. In the late 19th century there was a solar flare, and even with their rudimentary electrical system at that time, it completely wiped out Canada's electrical system as a result of this thing of a solar flare, a coronal mass ejection. So fortunately, I've been watching this thing. Sometimes it's 3, 4 going off at the same time. And you can watch this if you're interested at the Space Observatory in Tomsk in Russia, because NASA doesn't let you go on anymore. They don't want you to see what's going on. I can only assume that because they don't allow access. But you can see that in the last week, many flares have been happening. And what are the other symptoms that the planet's going through? It seems to be going through a really big shift. And it's like there'd be even the North Magnetic Pole, which has been previously lying in Canada, is moving towards Siberia at a measurable rate of 80 kilometers a year. That's unprecedented. It's moving fast. So something is happening to the, let's say, psychic emotional atmosphere of this planet. And it's been directly caused by the father of the solar system, the sun, not by human intervention. I mean, there was a spiking of heating like this back in medieval times when there was no technology, there was no fluorocarbons, there were no fossil fuels being burnt. And yet, during that period, there was a high warming period. Because the Earth is a living being. It's Gaia, it's our mother. It's actually a living being. And we human beings are just walking, talking, cogitating aspects of that one living being. We think we're separate, and that's the problem. We think we are the ego or the personality that I present to you now. Darpan. Who's Darpan? Oh, Darpan is this collection of ideas, prejudices, beliefs, concepts, likes, dislikes, and it's an accumulation of all of those things, and I call that real? Who was I when I was born, before I had those kind of attributes, before I defined myself with a name and with all of my beliefs and concepts? Who was I then? Who are you? Who are you truly? I mean, really. Not just, oh, I'm this, I do that, and I like this, and I don't like it. I mean, who are you really? This is what we're being asked for. This is what's tapping us on the shoulder right now in our evolutionary push. Not just the planet is going through this thing, but we, as part of that planet, and the human family, are going through a major change. A change that is unprecedented in our historical process, and one that will leave an indelible and unchangeable mark in the evolution of our consciousness. We have a choice right now, and the choice is binary. Do I choose to go along with this process, or do I resist it and stay in my little, hang like a limpet on the side of a bank, just staying as secure as possible? Because the planet is going through a change. In fact, I see it almost like a change as we go through when we're going through puberty. You know how when we're a kid, we grow up, we have a certain way of being, and then suddenly all these changes happen. Hormonal changes happen, emotional changes, physical changes, sexual changes, massive shift. And it's not the easiest of times to go through. This is quite a challenging, 2 or 3 years that we go through, because everything shifts, not just the physical changes in our body, but who am I? Who am I in relation to the other? The parents who were once God, and so now you suddenly question them, going, yeah, but where are you coming from? And how do you know that's real? And we start questioning our authority figures. And so we should, because it's called the process of growing up. And once we've gone through that puberty period, we stabilise into conscious and responsible adults within our community. And we start to begin to live our lives. So I believe that this is a very, very special time in our evolutionary unfolding. This is a time when Gaia herself, having been previously a 3D space-time karmic education school, is ascending to something far more majestic. It's the celebration of who we truly are. It's the realization, the recognition that we are not separate from anything. Quantum physics today, which studies the very, very tiny and the very small, has shown that everything is interconnected. All things are actually felt everywhere in the web. Like they have a thing called entanglement in quantum physics, where it says two particles can affect each other no matter what the distance. It can be in another galaxy. In mystical terms, people say, when a butterfly flaps its wings, it's felt on the other side of the universe. And indeed, I'd like to show today that one antidote, and there are many, that will help us to reclaim our vision, to manifest a new paradigm, not something that's attached onto what we've known in the past, utterly discontinuous from the past. In fact, the past is gone. It's finished. It's over. What we need to do now is start to envision and allow that new paradigm to take place, but it takes place within us. There's no political solution. It's not about setting up a better organisation that can take care of everything on a societal level. Of course that will come. That will be the natural byproduct of us shifting our awareness, of shifting consciousness. It won't be the reason we do it. It'll be a byproduct of our shift. And what does this mean, the shift in consciousness? What does it really mean? How do I define that? Well, there are three very powerful ways that we can shift our awareness. That is well within the reach of each and every one of us. It doesn't require any kind of PhD. It doesn't require any spiritual acumen. It doesn't require anything other than a willingness to redefine who you are and to change the life context, to change reality, to realize that reality is just a shared agreement. I call it the race hypnosis. That's what we call real. It's basically a race hypnosis where we all agree, this is a table, that's a chair, you're a person, you're a woman, you're a man, all these things. Of course we need that in order to communicate and be with each other, but in fact, what we're looking at is a world of labels. We're not really perceiving things as they truly are. And so what I'm talking about, the shift in consciousness, is about opening our eyes, is about making our eyes fresh. Like letting go of all of those ideas and concepts and beliefs that have kept us locked into a certain reality kind of frequency or reality state. So the first one is the willingness and taking the courage to radically shift your identity. Well, yeah, how do you do that? You're going to just change my name? Like change what I do? No. What you name, what you do is incidental and not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is who do you claim yourself to be? How do you define yourself? Up until now, in 3D space-time reality, deep in the karmic education school that we've been in, we kind of like think we have to learn our way out of here, that we need to, accumulate brownie points, spiritual brownie points, and then one day, if we're really good, we'll get enlightened and we'll leave this place. This is just a child's dream. Fair enough. I mean, it's a good step. There's nothing wrong with embracing spiritual attitudes that are going to evolve and lift your experience. But what I'm talking is even more fundamental than that. It's like saying, who are you? Am I this 3D personality, as I explained before, with all these ideas and beliefs and accoutrements? Or could it be possible that I am the one and all? Let's just break it down into dimensional, because what I'm talking about is a dimensional shift. We are multi-dimensional beings. I don't know if you have an argument with that, but in my experience, I've spent a lot of time exploring my inner being, and I know that I'm not just this personality that's talking to you right now. There are many dimensions within my being, and in fact, many dimensions in all of you. We all have the qualities of greatness within us. It's just our lack of courage and fear and lack of confidence that stop us from stepping out and declaring who we truly are. That I am a master, for example. I'm a master of the 5th dimension, which means I'm not saying that to big note myself. I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying that rather than identifying myself as this little sort of like limited person in 3D space-time, I'm connected to the one and all. Let's call it 5th dimensional awareness. 3rd dimensional awareness being this material reality we're in. 4th dimensional awareness being more the psychic world of dreams, still dualistic, still all the lords of light and all the lords of darkness, and existing within there. And then the 5th dimension, which is the unified field, as I understand it, the way I define it, a unified field of unconditional love and compassion. It's a space where we all belong. We are all it. You can experience yourself there as a point of sentience, awareness of an I, and yet that I includes the entire totality. Hence, quantum physics showing us clearly today how these ancient spiritual precepts are actually very practical kind of formulae for living a life that is integrated and connected and one with spirit. I used to ask my teachers in Peru, what do you think's wrong with the West? Why is there such a sickness? Why is there such alienation? Why is there such misery? And they'd pause for a moment and say, they've lost touch with spirit. And it's such a simple answer. That's so true. We in the West have been dulled and stultified by ordinariness, by bringing things down to the lowest denominator, by being enslaved to habits, by being, ruled and dictated by agencies outside of ourselves, authority figures that may have occupied a useful place in our lives earlier, but no longer is that the case. So what stands before us is the ability or the willingness. All existence asks for is the willingness. Once the willingness is there, it will turn over backwards in order to assist. But we first have to declare that we are up for this. And it's very, very clear. It's about reshifting our identity from the small, ego-encapsulated sense of I to include a much vaster reality, one that is connected to all things. It's a sense of oneness that the masters have talked about for millennia. It's a sense of non-dual consciousness, awareness. This is not something that you have to be in some rarefied space. It's just accessing, sourcing yourself from that place, and then allowing that to anchor itself in this 3D space-time bodysuit that I'm in temporarily. And the willingness to do that, to anchor that transcendental, archetypal reality in the ordinary body, this state here and now, in this room right now. Because what I'm saying is not about tripping out into some other thing, it's about holding that reality here now. So the first thing is to shift your identity. The second thing you need to shift is what you imply by your life context. For example, let's take the case of an environmentalist. Oh, I'm here to fix the planet, to save the planet. It's been hurt, and it needs healing, and it needs all of this. And as well-meaning as this environmentalist may be, that person is just contributing to the further degradation of this beautiful planet. Why? Because whatever you become fascinated by, this is an immutable law of the universe, you create more of. And if you get fascinated by how fucked up the planet is getting, guess what? You're going to contribute to it being more fucked up because you've got to enter into that frequency in order to even go there. Now imagine another environmentalist who might go, no, I'm fascinated with the beauty that this world has. Look at this incredible nature. I just want to somehow get in there and explore. I'm fascinated with how beautiful our home is. And I want to contribute to it being even more beautiful. And rather than fixing the planet, you contribute to it actually growing, to actually be. So this is what I mean by changing the context, what you imply by your life context. Because they're both environmentalists. But the attitude, where they're coming from a spiritual point of view, is very, very different. Now, I know that a lot of people, are doing much they can to save the planet. But I would urge those people, first, how about saving yourself? How about opening your eyes? How about shifting your perception before you start judging what the planet is going through? The planet may well be going through something that it needs to go through. In fact, we're not separate from the planet. We are the planet. We are going through this shift. So do we have control over the planet? Do we have control over the billions of people? No. We can't even change a friend unless they're willing to change. But what we do have dominion over, what we do have authority over, is our own being. And that's a good place to start. That's why I call it a radical shift in consciousness. It's actually very simple, but it is radical in the results that it produces. It's non-linear. It's utterly discontinuous from what's been before. It's about letting go, in fact dying to the past, and allowing yourself to be reborn in this moment, and to realize that in every moment, this is the point of power. And talking about power, we've been giving it away to all kinds of undeserving people. We're giving it away to politicians, to priests. I call them both the unholy mafia of the mind. So we've been giving it away to teachers, to doctors, to other kinds of experts, rather than relying upon our own God-given innate awareness and dominion over ourselves. So shifting your reality by changing the definition of who you define yourself to be, shifting your life context, so that your life context actually implies the reality that you want to create in this world. And the third one is just simply to follow spirit, to let spirit decide, to stop being, sort of arrogant, going, I can work this out, like when there's something to do, the mind goes, I know how to do it, I'll do this, we can do that, we can do it, and suddenly it's drowned out, this tiny voice of intuition. It's been extinguished, if not extinguished, it's been drowned out by the mind, trying to take over and trying to do things that it's actually not designed to do. The mind is a very useful tool. I call it the wish-fulfilling tree. It's an amazing tool. It can manifest anything that you can imagine. However, if it thinks it's running the ship, if it thinks it's in control of your mind, body, spirit, then only chaos ensues. If you turn on the television at any night and turn on the news, what you're witnessing is an insane mind running amok. Basically, that's what you're witnessing. You're not witnessing the news. You're witnessing an insane mind that's sick, running amok, thinking it's right, trying to control everything. This, what I'm suggesting, the radical shift, is simply by subduing the mind and allowing the mind to become the humble servant of spirit, something larger than what this personality is. You know, that's the 5D awareness that I'm talking about. That's the unified field. Some people call it God. Some people call it existence. Some people call it the goddess, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's this plenum of intelligence and interdependence of all living things in this universe. And it's vast. So much more vast than this brain, which is not hardwired to understand the concept of infinity. We are born and we die. Time appears to pass in between. And so we say time passes, time exists. But does it really? Have you ever really inquired into that? Have you ever really, just really examined what that means, time? Really? I mean, yes, the body appears to age. Things seem to happen. We make appointments for tomorrow and talk about yesterday for convenience. But it goes beyond convenience and people think it's real. Now is the only moment that has ever been. Now. That's it. Now. Even when we talk about the past or project into the future, it always happens within the context of now, this moment. It is never not now, regardless of what the mind is saying or where the mind might travel. But where the mind goes, it is never now. The mind loves the past and it loves the future, because then it's got lots of stuff to chew on and work out and do and get stressed over and be happy about and all of that sort of stuff. But now is now. And in the moment of now, mind is annihilated in the sense that it has no relevance in the now. It's only relevant when we say, if someone asks you a question, you go, well, yeah, okay, and you call upon your mind to deliver the answer. But it's got nothing to do with this moment. The mind lives in the past and in the future. But the mind is dreadfully afraid of being annihilated. So it's always trying to control the ship, always trying to run the show, always trying to act as if you are that mind. When in fact the truth is you're not. You're not the body. You're not the emotions. You're not the mind. These are simply vehicles through which you express yourself. That's it. They're vehicles, and they're temporal. They come and they go. But you will remain. That point of sentience, that point of awareness, that point of consciousness which you can't touch, measure, see or feel or hear. That is immortal. That is eternal. That is infinite. Because it doesn't have a personality. Just like that baby that came in. It's just seeing energy. It's just seeing existence as it truly is, without concepts, without overlaying labels or ideas. And it's coming back to that state of innocence that I think is the most profound shift that we can make in order to manifest a new paradigm. This is what we're being called for. This is what Spirit is tapping us on the shoulder going, I'm withdrawing all energy at this point for you to invest it. You think that your personality is real and that all of your dreams and precious, creations that actually are not aligned with Spirit are important. I'm withdrawing my energy from that. That's what Spirit seems to be saying. But what it's giving us is an invitation to transcend that 3D space-time blinkered reality that we have been existing up until now, which has been the cause of all of our problems, which is the cause of all of the global crises that we saw here earlier and that I mentioned earlier. So these are the three main ways to follow. Let Spirit take control. It means you can relax. It means you don't have to worry anymore because it's in the higher hands. And just as if the planet is going through a transition, then so be it. Then how about we assist that planet rather than trying to, rail against it? Because just because it's getting polluted and stuff doesn't mean it's bad. That's what happens when you get pimples, when you go through puberty, or you're having emotional, outbursts. It happens. It's part of the process. It's like this is a birthing that we're going through. And the very concept of birth implies that it's an arduous task, often the case. Sometimes it's really easy, but often it's an arduous task, often dangerous to both mother and child. So what we're going through is kind of a major challenge, that we need to learn the art of let go, to allow a higher authority, to allow Gaia, to allow the sun, who know what they're doing, to affect this incredibly unprecedented event that we're all going to be a part of. And you know, like, it's going to happen because it's impeccable how it happens. You know, I mentioned the coronal mass ejections, the cosmic perspective. I've mentioned the personal response that we need to do with that, but the social, political and economic effects of that will flow naturally once we make that first step. And it's not something that we can do for anybody else. It's a choice we have to make within ourselves. And really what that choice makes is, it's a binary choice. You're faced with the choice of, do I choose love in this moment, in this very moment, in my responses, my reactions to whatever is being presented to me by life? Or do I choose fear? In other words, do I play secure? Do I stick to what I think I know? Do I stay in the boundaries of what I know is true? Or do I give it over and allow something greater to take hold, to take control, so that I can be a willing participant and a humble servant to that process? This is the question, this is what's being asked of us right now. And, you know, it is within the jurisdiction and the power of each and every one of us to make that shift. And in fact, every person will be asked to make that shift. Not everyone will be willing. Some people will not be. This is a very special part, because I haven't mentioned the precession of the equinoxes, which I mentioned in the video, which is a 26,000 year cycle. Just as the Earth moves around the Sun, so the whole solar system moves around the galaxy, around the central sun called Alcyone, and progresses every 2,160 years through one of the zodiacal signs. We've just left Pisces, now just entering into Aquarius for the next 2,160 years. And so, like, as we come, it takes 25,920 years for that whole cycle to happen. Like the Sphinx, for example, I was just recently in Egypt, with the lion was facing exactly to the constellation of Leo when the solar system was in the constellation of Leo. And you know, it's moved since then, and we are moving as a species. This is part of our evolutionary process. This is part of our growing up. This is part of us graduating to become conscious custodians of this incredibly beautiful earth that we live upon. And we, you know, it's not just about being conscious custodians, but many people will not be able to make this shift. Many people will be unwilling to make this shift. I do believe that there will be concomitant earth changes that will that will come with these shifts and changes on the sun. And I think that, you know, it may well trigger some sort of physical, well, from our terms, catastrophe. But these are not really catastrophes. When these events occur, it's a little bit like the Tibetans when they make an incredibly beautiful mandala. And with every care, you know, with great presence and mindfulness, they put every little bit into place. Just when it's all done, they go whoosh and destroy it. Why? Because it's an example of how things work in existence. Once you realise, and I've been fortunate to be able to realise through my work with ayahuasca, that there is no death, then it's all a matter of perspective, and it's all a matter of growth. I mean, we all die. Nothing is certain on this planet. The only thing that's certain is that we're going to die one day, this physical body, this mortal coil. But in fact, as I said earlier, that consciousness, that awareness which animates this mortal coil, lives on. Or if you like to say, yeah, because death is not part of, is not an anti-life. Death is actually part of life. It's how we enter into this domain, and some people would call this domain, like Nick Bostrom from Sweden, who's a very famous and well-known philosopher. He came up with the idea that we live in a simulation. But in fact, There is no reality. It's a simulation. It's like we're in a computer program. And you know what? I've really looked into this, and I can't argue with it. It could well be the case. And as such, a very convincing simulation. I mean, it feels real, it looks real, it tastes real. I can hear things, all my senses tell me that it's real. But as any clever magician will show you, it's so easy to fool the senses. So we can't rely upon them. We can enjoy them, we can explore them, we can explore our world via the senses, but what we can rely upon has to be something not of this world, not something you can touch, measure, taste, smell or feel. It has to be something that is ephemeral and yet is immanent in all living, in all physical matter. And this is what we call consciousness, that, you know, I call consciousness, awareness, call it what you will. But it is something that lives and animates and is part of all things. So this is our only real bedrock that we can call upon. Everything else is shifting, changing, not certain, can't rely upon anything. You know, I could walk across the street tomorrow and be hit by a truck and die. So we can't rely upon the world other than for functional things, like coming here tonight, listening to a talk, and we do things together. And of course, we enjoy those things, because the very spirit I'm talking about, the living awareness that resides in all things, is made of joy. Its very nature is joyous. It is something beyond the duality of this and that, good and bad, you know, up and down, in and out. This is the construct, the 3D space-time construct, is the playground we get to be in while we rub up against duality, while we knock against these polarities and you know, go down the river of life with sharp edges on our stones until they slowly get, you know, rounded and formed. And you know, another beautiful metaphor I like to use is that, you know, the diamond consciousness. To create a diamond, the earth has to provide massive amounts of force and pressure and, you know, like time and, you know, heat and cold to create a diamond out of carbon. That's what's required. Now, why would it be any difference with consciousness, except that it happens much more quickly and also it's not dense. So to create the diamond in consciousness, we need to go through a process of pressure and, you know, change and angst and fear and joy and all the dualities that come together. And what do we face today? A crucible, an alchemical crucible, which is in fact the very conditions that are needed in order to create this diamond awareness. And for that there is today, more than ever before, the polarization of the light and the dark. Let's not say good and bad, because it's a judgment. There is a light and dark. The frequencies, the dense frequencies of the dark, and the incredibly high frequencies of the light are separated on the planet today. And it's necessary. You know, I used to have a lot of frustration, anger, judgment, resentment against people who do bad things on the planet. You know, people who are in power, like the debt thing, the money, the way the money is used on the planet, for example. You know, placing debt onto human consciousness is like a black magic spell that has been kept us bound for millennia, since the days of Sumeria, when, you know, usury, commerce and all those things first came into being 6,000 years ago in Sumeria. It's been going on ever since, and people are always on this treadmill of debt, of I owe you and I'm not good enough and I need to do this, I can't live my true purpose because I've got to earn the bucks. This is abominable. This is slavery of the highest order, except none of us realise it. We're willing slaves. Not only are we the prisoners in the prison, but we are our own jailers, because we believe this stuff. We take it on board. Now let me just talk for a moment about how we measure what is real, because this is a very important shift we have to make too. So we've got shift your identity, shift what you imply by your life context. The next thing is shift the way you measure reality. Now we all think, oh, but reality is reality. It's real, isn't it? Like, it's a microphone stand, you're there, I'm here, it's a building, gravity exists, so we go, that's real. Well, you know, yes, on a certain paradigm, in a certain context, it is real, but in a very limited one. What is real in 3D space-time is based upon your beliefs, your experiences, and your fear base. It's very easy to fool someone in the third dimensional plane. It's very easy to do a con trick on people. As we've witnessed just now in our recent past, all you need to do is feed people's beliefs back to themselves and activate their fear base. And they'll call that real. Because, oh, yeah, I know that to be true, and this is freaking me out, so it must be real. And that's the limited, personality-based, ego-based perception of a 3D space-time being, trying to earn or learn and survive their way through their life experience. Let's face it, that's what most people are doing, just surviving their life. It's such an appalling situation when every moment is fraught with possibility. And you are not limited from this moment. And in this moment, anything is possible. I know your mind is saying, no, but that's not true. I know that from my experiences. Again, that's the 3D space-time way of looking at it. That doesn't relate to my experience. But if you say something that does relate to my experience, and you say something that I believe to be true, then I'll probably believe you. So it's very easy for a con man. They just have to feed your own belief system back to you and activate your fear base, and bam, they've got you. If you're operating from a fourth dimensional perceptual referencing modality, let's call it that, it's slightly different. It's much more subtle. It's not like as basic as the 3D one. Went from a fourth dimensional way of perceiving reality, it looks like you can tell, you can feel it when someone's not telling the truth. You can know something doesn't resonate. In other words, the fourth dimension is more about psychic and emotional understanding. Not just a belief system, not just your experiences, and not just your fear base telling you what is real. You're there, you're like perceiving on more subtle levels. It's a far better way of perceiving and defining reality than the first one that I outlined. But it's still limited. It's still within the fourth dimension. You are under the illusion of duality, under the illusion of good and evil, but that's still being played out. That's happening in the third and the fourth dimensions. I've spent a long time in the fourth dimension with my work in ayahuasca. And it still has all the duality, all the lords of light, all the lords of darkness, and everything in between. And you are still navigating through what the Buddhists call samsara, an illusion. Fifth dimensional awareness, which is now, here now, that has a completely different way of referencing reality. You want to know what that one is? Get ready for this. It's going to be really hard for some people to get, but things are real because you say they're real. In other words, you declare them to be real. Is that okay? No, if I say this, that I'm da-da-da-da, and I'm not because I know this to be true, immediately jump back into your third 3D way of referencing reality. So you need to be, when you're working from the fifth dimension, and many great masters have always worked from that fifth dimension, they can manifest amazing miracles. Why? Because they're operating from the place where your word is your wand. It's not just a communication of facts and information. Your word becomes a magical act, and which defines your experience of reality. So there was a very famous person who once said, "I am the way, the light, and the truth." And someone said, "You arrogant bastard," and they nailed him to a cross. But that man was simply accessing that fifth dimensional perceptual reality. He was identifying himself not as this body, but I am one with the one and all. I am one with the Lord, he would say, but we would say I'm one with existence. I'm one with the unified field. Yes, I am a kind of a reference, a sense of sentience within that, but I am a totality. And that's paradox is not a paradox in the fifth dimensional field, because it's not about logic. And if you start to go, "Oh, but if I say that," then you're immediately jumping back into the third dimensional way of measuring what is real. So the most powerful way for shifting your consciousness in order to manifest a new paradigm is to shift the way you measure reality. Change your perceptual referencing modality from that which you've been using for your entire life up until this moment. Now, of course, from a 3D point of view, habits are ingrained. They're not going to change overnight. But mindfulness and remembrance and awareness are the ineffable tools which will keep you focused upon whatever reality you choose for yourself as being beneficial for you. So, all the great beings, the Buddha used to talk about mindfulness, about remembrance of who we are. And of course you're going to forget. You fall off the horse, you get back on. You don't beat yourself up and go, oh shit, I buggered it again, I lost it again, I lost the fact that I'm a multidimensional being. I'm back into my struggling, limited 3D personality that's trying to earn or learn its way out of this place. But then you just go, okay, and rather than beating yourself up, you come back. You just remember. Remember. Come back into the one, to the sense of oneness. And the way we do this is by being around people who are also willing to start to hold this frequency, which is the great value I found of living in the ashram in India. I mean, it's beautiful to be with Osho, and beautiful to be in the context of a sangha that is dedicated to the flowering of human consciousness. But what was great there was that you were constantly in the company of, in the presence of, other beings who were doing the same experiment, who were having the willingness to fall off the horse but then come back, because you had lots of examples of it all around you. Here in Byron Bay it's good, but anywhere else in the world it's really hard to find those examples because people are so identified with the race hypnosis and who they think they are as a personality. So these are the keys that I'd like to offer up this evening for this radical shift that each and every one of us is capable of if willingness is there. And it happens within the crucible of our own being. But as it happens within the crucible of our own being, the next thing is you share. And you share this. And as you share it, it becomes available and it resonates. With those who resonate, they get it. They catch the fire. Those who it doesn't resonate, that's fine. Because, we've got eternity. If it takes you many, many, many lifetimes that you want to still spend in this 3D space-time reality, then fine, because time doesn't exist. Take as long as you like. But if you're tired of the treadmill, if you've been round and round and round this endless game, and remember the processional sequence of 26,000 years is just one large epoch or era in which we all choose to incarnate, if you want to take a Buddhist belief stance on this, multiple times, hundreds, thousands, more times. But we're coming to the end of that processional cycle. This is a time for graduation. This is a time for the transcendence of what we've learned. This is a time to bring to the table what we've gathered along the way from all these countless incarnations. And the sorting, the graduation is not done by what you know. It's by frequency. It's by the frequency that you carry in your heart. It's the frequency that you embody in your being. It's the frequency that you demonstrate in your daily life. That's what I mean about what you imply with your life context. Someone who's got that, you can feel it. There's a feeling around them. And it's not that they're doing anything different or know anything more or understand anything better than anybody else. Not at all. It's just they've chosen to embody that frequency, that shift, that dimensional shift. What we're going through here, ladies and gentlemen, on this planet is a dimensional shift. Nothing less, nothing more. But it's profound on all kinds of levels. And we're in the middle, can't see the wood for the trees. It's like, oh shit, what's happening? What's happening to the world? Oh, there's wars there, Ukraine, shit. All this going down, fuck the American dollar, nobody believes it anymore. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the house? What about the mortgage? All of this is going on and on and on and on. And it's rising to an intolerable crescendo.
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And this is something that we actually, we need to just rise above the melee and see the higher perspective. And once seen, have the courage to embrace that reality. Choose that reality for yourself. Because, whatever picture of reality you choose, the universe has no option but to deliver it. I guarantee it. It's going to take an act of faith at first, because your 3D mind's going to say, that's not possible, I can't, that's not true, and all this stuff. But I'll give every one of you tonight, for those of you who are willing to put it into practice, a little exercise. And that is that I call it, this is really practice your fifth dimensional way of establishing reality. Now, for those of you who are interested in doing it, when you go home, pick up a piece of paper, like all these papers. This was all my notes tonight. I haven't picked up all ones yet. I was going to read it to you, but anyway, because I'm writing about this stuff right now. But yeah, pick up a piece of paper, and then without any censorship, start writing really fast your highest vision version of how you'd like to live your life on this planet if you were given the possibility to create heaven on earth. Start writing how your relationships would look like, what your world would look like, what you would embody, what values would become important to you, what you'd like to see in your life, and write it down fast, because the mind's going to come in and go, that's not possible, no, that's bullshit, I'm not qualified, I'm not good enough, all that stuff is going to come out. But write without any censorship, and do at least a full page. Doesn't matter if it makes sense, you can make sense of it later, but just do it fast. And when you've done it, get another piece of paper, have that next to you, and start reading what you're writing, and then observe your mind, observe your brain. As you start reading your highest vision version of your living heaven on earth right now, it becomes all these, what I call the weeds in the garden, start to appear. If you're declaring your highest self, immediately the mind goes, no, you're not good enough for that. You haven't got enough money for that. You don't even know anything about what you're writing about here. So immediately write those things down. Write down your weeds. Put them down on this blank piece of paper. And there'll be lots. And you'll be filling this piece of paper. And then you just look at that piece of paper when you're done and go, fuck, that's what my mind is doing on a subliminal level every moment of the day. That's how I'm limiting myself. That's how I'm limiting my potential, my capability, my talents, my way that I can interface with the world, and the joy that I can share with other people. This is how I'm limiting it, right here now. This is a very, very good barometer of what's going on beneath the level of conscious awareness all the time in each and every one of us. So you look at that, and you might do it a few times because different ones will come up. But when you're done, take that piece of paper and make a ritual. Some people might want to do it at midnight under the spruce of a certain tree and bury it in the ground, or whatever you want to do. Make a candle and just burn it. But something finite in an act, so that your subconscious mind, which is where all the power is, it's not now 10% of our conscious awareness, it's in the subconscious. So the subconscious mind gets the tangible message, this person's really, really serious about this. So let's do it. But if you don't do that, it'll just go, yeah, heard it all before, beautiful platitudes. You've done those affirmations for years. I'm abundant, money comes to me. I've been hearing you do that for ages, but nothing changes. So, you've got to convince, you've got to get the subconscious mind on board, in resonance, in alignment. And that's when mind starts working for you as an ally, as a humble servant of spirit. Because you put the house in order. You say, not my will, but divine will be done. Me, person, Darpan, all I need is give me the next step, and I'll do that to the best of my ability. I've actually been doing that for 30 years, since I saw this in a vision 30 years ago. I've been going, it's not my story. Wherever we're going, you decide, just give me the next step, and I will do that to the best of my ability. In other words, you've got to go over here and do this work over there. Great, now I'll organise airfares, I'll get that together. And the mind loves projects. The mind loves things to do. So you give it lots of stuff to do, but it's not the one who decides. That is reserved for spirit, for the unified field, whatever you want to call it. And so you have a direct connection to that. And you then put your mind to work, you put your emotions to work, you put your body to work. All the vehicles to manifest something utterly discontinuous from the past. Not something that is just a rerun or a different version or a different iteration of, modalities or things that we've experienced or created in the past. No. The buck stops here. This is an absolutely new beginning, not something that is a progression. And that new beginning begins with us. It begins inside of our own being, inside of the crucible of awareness that we are, which is not separate from the one and all. To allow spirit to guide and to bring spirit back into our community so that we can become healthy, so that we can become connected, and so that we can, be free of the mental anguish, the separation, the misery, the mental madness, the insanity that we've been creating for ourselves and having to endure for way too long. It's a time of waking up, ladies and gentlemen. This is a time to wake up from the dream of the illusion that's been sold to us by the collective. I'm not going to blame any elite. They are us, we are they. We've all agreed to it. We've all signed on to the program, so we're all responsible. There's no blame here. So, I just want to leave you with the saying that one great visionary, Buckminster Fuller, said once, never try to change an existing reality. Simply invent a superior model and the old one will simply be obsolete. That's the way I think that we can approach this sort of thing, is to not try and mitigate any of the reality that we've been dealing with so far, but to start from a new slate. And Stanislav Grof, one of my great teachers and mentors, said this: because I see that the marriage of science and spirituality, bringing spirit back into science, which is what quantum mechanics is doing. There's a great book I can recommend to you by Paul Levy called The Quantum Field, and it's subtitled The Radical Synthesis of Science and Spirituality. Highly recommended. It blew my mind. It was just amazing. And I think that the bringing together of science with spirit, because they've been travelling parallel paths for centuries, and now beginning to converge with the studies of quantum mechanics and quantum theory. And it's a joyous moment, because I feel that this science of spirituality can be the very bedrock, the foundation upon which we can manifest a new paradigm. And this is what Stanislav Grof has to say. Dr. Stanislav Grof, great man. He's like a Carl Jung of the transpersonal psychological movement, and a great man. Western science is approaching a paradigm shift of unprecedented proportions. One that will change our concepts of reality and of human nature, bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and modern science, and reconcile the differences between Eastern spirituality and Western pragmatism. It's like bringing the two halves of the brain together, the left and the right, the analytical and the holistic, coming together finally. Science is yet to even admit the presence of consciousness, because it can't taste it, it can't smell it, it can't measure it. But when it does, and we're standing at the brink of that precipice, we stand at that threshold again, it will have effects far beyond the pure theory of science or spirituality. It will fundamentally shift the way we see ourselves, the way we relate to each other, and the way we relate to our world. Thank you very much.
We're going to have a discussion now, like Q&A, really. So I'm going to swap mics with you, Doug, so we can have a roaming mic. So for the...
Oh, swap mics?
Oh no, swap leads.
Yeah. So that's the one I just gave you. Yeah, it is. Is it? Okay, I'll take this one.
This is the short one, so you have...
This is short.
Yeah, so think up your questions. If there may well be a little bit of those wonderful homemade biscuits left, if you want to and samosas, and of course if you want to wander off and get something at the same time. So yes, please do speak into the mic, because we've got a wonderful High Lakers videoing this, and the quality is really good. And we put it on turningpointtalks.com in about 10 days or so. And you can see all the last ones too, the last one was amazing. So I'm going to pass the mic around, please use it. And I'd like to start with a question really, because I feel like there's a bit of a dilemma in that myself, as with you, we're very aware of all the challenges that are coming up in the world at the moment. And in fact, I make a point of being on top of it. There's so many feeds, and I enjoy it. I love to know what is really going on, and I love to see at the moment how stuff is changing and the truth is coming out, And yet I'm very aware too that putting too much attention on that takes me away from time when I could just be in spirit, I could be being more meditative. And so it seems like, how does one get the balance there? How do you balance that one?
Yeah, that's very important, because it's very easy to become entranced and hypnotized by the daily narrative. Certainly it's true of the mainstream press, but it's also true of the alternative press. These things run off emotions. They feed off emotions: horror, shock, agreement, disagreement. It basically it's a mental process, keeping abreast of information. And whilst information is useful and can be very good, I mean, I like it. I've got a good, healthy brain that likes information. It's actually not at all essential in the process that I'm talking about. The kind of process that I'm talking about could be happening with a person in the Namibian desert who's never listened to a television or come into contact with any information. So the information is if not irrelevant, it's not important to the process that I'm talking about. The process I'm talking about is just allowing what is happening in the psychic field of the planet today. We are at the stage of great evolution. And as I say, it's not there is a personal choice within it, but it's being driven by something that is transpersonal. That is the sun. It's being driven, it's a cosmic event. And even the powers that be who want to block out the sun, for the very reasons that I'm saying, that the sun is important, on the basis that it's warming up our planet, as if the sun could ever be a bad influence upon any of the planets. But it certainly does trigger changes in the planets, absolutely. And this change is not one that is happening because of a political or a sociological or an information movement. This is a change that's happening, independent of all of those factors. That's the human factor, the human realm. And it is important to be well aware of what's going on, and it is important to have information in order to guide and navigate our way through these events. But it's not essential. Any child will get what's going on the natch without information. It's a frequency thing. It's not about what you know or don't know or what you entertain in your mind. It's about frequency. It's about the heart. It's about opening up into a field where the heart, being the middle chakra, the one that bridges the higher ones and the lower ones, is the great transformer. So that when something happens, you can take it into your heart. This is the birth of compassion. Even really challenging things, when someone's really sick or your mother's dying or someone's dying of cancer, there's nothing you can do. But you can just be with it and feel it without having to fix it or do anything. It's just about presence. And it's about a certain frequency within that presence. And this is what I'm talking about. And that is not dependent upon any kind of information. In fact, I would say the information, if anything, creates a cloud or some sort of, it creates an unclarity within what is happening on the natch, on this planet, and indeed in the entire solar system. So what we can do is just keep tuning in. Go into nature. Whenever you find yourself really in a spin about this or that, or upset because look what's happening in the world or something else, just go and be quiet. Don't even try and meditate. As one of our great teachers used to say, don't meditate. Who's meditating? Who is it that's meditating? Just be quiet. And that's good advice. Because the mind can get very tricky about when it's meditating and what it's doing and how to meditate and how to breathe and what mantras and all of the rest of the garbage that goes on. It's just about being quiet, coming back to presence. You know, being next to a pool, a waterfall, a beautiful flower at night when there's full moon, anything at all in a natural context can trigger it. Being with someone who you really love to be with, wordless, and practicing silence. And remember, silence is not just the absence of sound, it's an acute focus of awareness. That's what silence is. So it's about focusing and bringing our awareness to a very fine, sharp lasers kind of quality where you can, you know, be that and then allow the information of the world and the day-to-day life to wash through, but never to if you find yourself falling off that level of awareness, that space of just being, then find some way to shift the energy to come back. And it's really simple, you know, like if you love to dance, dance. If you like to make music, sing. But whenever you find yourself in a state where your frequency drops, you're feeling a bit tired or depressed or lonely or whatever the case may be, find a way to bring that frequency back up. It's called self-care. And that is totally within our possibility to do. So it's not about having a strategy or an antidote or a medicine or anything like that. It's simply about self-awareness. Being aware of your state. And having the self-inquiry to know that, you know, that you're off kilter. And when you are, you don't do anything. You don't judge yourself. You don't do anything other than bring yourself back into the frequency in whatever way you can. And so it's just about navigating with that frequency. And as we proceed forwards in these uncharted waters of our global transformation, it's a matter of just trust. We have to let go of strategies, of ways of trying to deal with what's going on in the world. It's coming back to a place of oneness and bringing the frequency to the fore, rather than what the mental, you know, machinations are doing or not doing. It's really simple. Any child can do it. And, you know, you see a child when it gets really angry or pissed off, it's really angry and it's beautiful and it's angry, but the moment it drops it and it's smiling again, it's completely in that. The frequency is shifted. They don't carry it over into the next emotion, whereas, you know, human grown-ups do. If you get really upset with somebody, you go, I shouldn't be like this, it's not socially acceptable. So you put on a nice smile to cover it up, but it's not authentic. Because you're still feeling pissed off, but you're putting a smile over it. So that's still keeping the same frequency, holding you down in the dense frequency. So it's about lifting the frequency. However that takes place, there's 1,000,001 ways to do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank goodness we live here in Barrenshire. There's so many ways to do that. Somebody like a question?
Fantastic talk, Darpan.
Thanks, mate.
Really good. I have a main question to ask about science, but before doing so, probably a yes or no answer to the first thing. I think you're equating consciousness with awareness, and many of the great commentators do so, but am I reading your take on that correctly?
Well, this is a point of semantics, and one should define one's terms, and I think that it's a grey area. What is your definition?
I'm inclined to the view, based on the people that I've been listening to take the view that in fact they're one and the same. But I'm not here to argue about it, it's just that you're using the two terms.
I kind of use them interchangeably sometimes, because consciousness is a kind of like, it deals with not just our awareness, it deals with the whole, the consciousness of the whole, whereas I guess awareness to me is a more personal thing, but that's just my take on it. It could be, you know, it's just semantics really.
Yeah, we can move on from that. The real question I wanted to ask you was to challenge you on science. We have a guy in the world who some months ago happened to say that science is the new God. I'd like you to comment on that in a moment. And from where I'm sitting, science is very tarnished after the events of the last few years. In fact, I would go so far as saying that truth has been hijacked by science, without me being too dramatic. So I guess I have a bit of an issue with what role science will plan the future. To me, it's all about connection with the earth.
Thank you. I'm in total agreement with you on that. And just to take your comment a little bit further, I agree with you. Science has become the new God. In the past, in the medieval times or before, that was like, God says that this is da 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 da. God says, now you see Boris Johnson when he was still the Prime Minister, science, we follow the science, science says, and you might as well be putting God there in the way they're using it. They're using it to influence and hypnotise and induct people into a certain narrative. So they're calling upon what they consider to be a higher authority. God no longer works, it doesn't wash with people. So nowadays it's science. And that's the new catchphrase. And I agree with you, it's become tarnished. It's become completely, it's been lowered in its, because science really is the jewel that the West has brought forward in the sense of studying and observing the natural phenomena of nature, being able to repeat certain experiments in order to establish certain rules within the 3D paradigm, but it's been limited by its unwillingness to admit the presence of consciousness. And this is where quantum physics has just taken it way beyond, because they've shown that not only is there the observable laws or effects of phenomena within the universe, but even more than that, we influence how we perceive those objects and those things. Quantum physics is showing us that we as the observer are the most important aspect of anything we perceive. We never question that. Who is the observer? When we do an empirical experiment, say a Newtonian experiment, where you say, okay, I'm doing this experiment, it can be repeated, therefore it's real. And what they're addressing is the physical phenomena within the 3D laws of the 3D paradigm. Yes, gravity exists. Yes, if you do X, Y will happen, and all the rest of it. However, this is still not acknowledging the elephant in the room. Who is it that's perceiving that? And there's this lovely example that I think was Niels Bohr or maybe Schrödinger that gave to demonstrate that things behave the way they do because we expect them to behave in that way. In other words, things conform to our reality. That's the power of intention, what the spirit, people in the spirituality kind of camp have been talking about for eons. So they give this kind of example whereby, it's only as the act of the observer that what we perceive to be real is real. And he gave this example. It was like, imagine a 10-pin bowling alley. You've got the 10 pins standing out the other end, you're sprinkled with powder, fine powder, the whole way down to there, right? And you throw the ball, and you see the ball going straight towards it, and someone calls your name, you turn around, and look, and then look back, and it's got whoosh, and it knocks all the 10 things. But if you look at the tracks, it went like that while you were looking, and it did this while you weren't looking, then immediately you went back to hitting the 10 pins. This is what they've demonstrated clearly, that phenomena, particles, behave in that way. It's called superpositioning. That everything is in superpotential at any given moment. And our consciousness absolutely bends things to be the way they are because we expect them to be that way. In other words, you could say, right you are if you think so. And this is where science has become, suddenly empiricism is out the window. The empirical method or objectivity has been shown by quantum physics to be a figment. It doesn't exist. Yes, within the 3D space-time and Newtonian physics, it holds true. But as soon as you extrapolate beyond that, in the very, very tiny particle world or in the cosmos, it does not hold true. So I would say that science is on the brink of a great rebirth, of a huge renewal. But just before it does, it usually dies. And I agree that the way that science has been used, particularly in the last several years, the way it's been used as a bludgeon to bludgeon people into certain ways of behaving, is a travesty, a complete travesty of what science stands for. And it's as bad a travesty as the invention of God. So I agree that science has become the interchangeable word. We used to invoke God, now they invoke science. But science is on the very threshold of exploding into a whole new paradigm. And that is when it finally acknowledges the power of the observer, the power of the observing consciousness, that all things are in fact nested in a sense of oneness, a sense of consciousness, and that the incredible variety and the display of novelty that we experience in our world is merely the extrapolation of our own reality in a certain sense. We can say we're creating that reality, and many people in New Age do use that word, rather loosely I would say. But in fact, at the essence, of the core, according to quantum physics, that is the truth. So I think we're at the precipice, at the very, about to pass through the door of an amazing re-evaluation, a reinvention, and science will come into wholeness. And instead of travelling parallel paths between science and mysticism, finally they're coming together to converge, as I said, like the two sides of the brain, to create a holistic sense of oneness. And that is not just partial truth, but starts to, where we can apprehend the mystery, the truth, and start to really lean into the mystery of our own existence.
Thank you very much. It was more amazing than I even imagined. And I'm very grateful, thank you, as we all are, alright? To help us with our note-taking, could you please summarise the three things again for us?
Okay, the three shifts.
Perfect.
The shift a shift in identity, who you declare yourself to be, or what you align with as being I. Then there's a shift in the life context. That means what you imply by what you do in your life. What kind of a reality is that implying? Is it implying an abundant, beautiful, open, connected reality? Or is it implying a closed, suspicious, fearful, secure, conscious reality? And what you do, how you live your life, is implying that moment by moment. So you shift your reality from saying, instead of being this poor person just bumbling their way through their life and their 3D space-time, you declare that I am a majestic, multidimensional being, capable of whatever I decide, whatever I feel is my highest offering, my highest gift. If you can come to that place, your whole experience shifts, because you're shifting your whole life context from one of lack to one of expansion, and even beyond lack and expansion into one of being whole, into declaring yourself to be not separate, to be one with all things. And the third one is shifting the way you measure what is real, how you define reality. Because we all accept that things are real without questioning them. That this is hard, that's a flaw. Of course they are real within this 3D space-time, but that's just within there. We're not just that. We are multi-dimensional. We have many dimensional layers, and what is true on one dimensional layer is not necessarily true on another. And yet within the totality of it all, it's a paradox that is a living, evanescent, ineffable reality of consciousness, of being, of presence, of absolute presence. And we can bring that by simply choosing to. And at first it's going to be hard, as I say, it's not going to be easy. But your willingness and persistence, you'll start remembering more than you start forgetting. In the beginning you'll start forgetting more than remembering, but it will soon become part of you. And so they're the three things. Once you've shifted your identity, once you've shifted what you imply to be real by your life context, once you've decided how you're going to define reality, then all that's left to do is follow spirit with trust, without doubt, without hesitation. To just follow spirit. And you know how you know that you're on the right path? Things will just get easier. The flow starts to happen. Synchronous things start to happen in your life. Like wonderful, amazing things start to happen in your life. And you go, wow, I'm in the flow, that's really cool. But the moment you find yourself in struggle, or difficulty, or like intensity of emotions, or you've fallen off the horse. And rather than trying to argue or kind of rationalize your way into why you got there. Just simply recognize it, drop it, and come back. And that's the key. So it's not about, you know, your beliefs anymore. It's simply about holding the frequency. Yeah, that's it, the frequency.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
I just want to pass it.
Hello. I'm the founder of Nature Society, and our main mission is to embody paradise on Earth by reconnecting all the symbiotic relations between all life. And my question is, do you believe it's possible to reach our full potential through connecting all the symbiotic relations and step into our role in the symbiotic relations fully?
What was the last question?
If we can reach our full potential by stepping into our role in the symbiotic relations completely, like into nature.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's beautiful. Not only do I think that it's possible, I think, as I hope it came across this evening, it's paramount. This is our only way forward. There's no solutions on the material plane. Our way forward, what's being asked of us, what's being we're being forced into, is to grow up. But it's growing up in consciousness, not in information. Certainly information will be a byproduct of that. Already there's an information revolution. But so far as I can see today, that hasn't necessarily changed consciousness. It's just made us more knowledgeable. It's made us more access to lots of banks of information itself, but what I'm talking about is the actual transformation of our own being. Like at school, what they do at school is they just give you information. They give you lots of stuff to learn. But how many schools actually focus upon the transformation of the individual, of the boy or a girl in that school? And that takes a lot more than just rote learning.
This is probably where you need to determine that consciousness and awareness. But that question,
yeah.
because that is not answering the question.
Sorry?
It's not answering the question unless you can correlate what you mean by consciousness, whereas basically in this question you're talking about awareness.
Oh, the awareness consciousness thing, okay. Well, I'm not sure, because words are words and can be very tricky. I don't want to get bogged down in that. Like I said, I use them interchangeably. Awareness is what I usually talk about with my own awareness. The consciousness is what I'm talking about, our shared consciousness, or the consciousness of the planet, or the consciousness of the universe, which is transpersonal. Yeah, no, on an individual level. Well, I think it's totally paramount that we do that. Creating our version of paradise on Earth is exactly what I think we should do.
Maybe if I form the question like this, do you believe that we can have paradise on Earth by embodying and reconnecting to the symbiotic relations between all life and the circle of life?
I don't think that beliefs can really change much other than our existence here on this third dimensional plane, as I said. Beliefs are something that's very personal to the individual. We have collective beliefs as well. What I'm talking about is not within the realm of information or beliefs. That's still looking at a 3D space-time. And to answer your question, I don't really know the answer to that question. But what I'm talking about here is something beyond beliefs. It's something of the spirit, of the nature that wants to awaken beyond the beliefs, beyond the concepts, and beyond the ideas of who we think we are and how we're operating in the world. So, yeah, I think it behooves us to really, on a one-to-one level in this daily life, to create the most beauty and joy and love and connection that is possible. And I think that will be a natural byproduct if we can let go of our beliefs and let the one and all, let spirit start to inform what needs to be done at any moment. Like, you don't need knowledge. Knowledge is baggage. It's actually, when you think about knowledge or beliefs, they've all been handed down to us from somebody else. It's not our own authentic experience. It's something we go, oh, do you believe that? Yeah, I believe that. Okay, I'm on board. But without testing it for yourself. What I'm talking about is actually something fundamental inside of ourselves that's got to open up. The awakening I'm talking about is repositioning yourself from how you see yourself, from how you live your life, from how you measure reality, so that the natural byproducts of taking that action are more connection, more love, more beauty, and it'll start to be it'll trickle into or not trickle, it'll come in like a tidal wave into our daily experience on an interpersonal level. But for the purposes of this conversation, it's like it was more like having the courage to let go into not knowing, like what I'd like to call wisdom of insecurity. Just not knowing. No, I don't know. I'm talking to you about lots of things, but all I'm really saying is have the courage to trust and to let go of old beliefs, old ways of measuring reality, old ways of operating, and then see what happens. Live this moment totally fully, and then let the next moment take care of itself, rather than projecting forward or backwards. And whatever needs to be known in this moment, like me giving this talk tonight, I had a whole speech here, but whatever needs to be expressed will be expressed. But you don't know what's going to come in the next moment. And you don't prepare, and you don't have a strategy about it. But if it's not there, you simply say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But if something is there, you share it. It's like that. It's beyond the belief.
Thank you.
I think we just got time for two more questions, because this lady, this lady wants, and then you, and then that's it.
It's not really a question. I just really feel like giving you a big cuddle.
Oh, got it already, thank you.
Can I?
Yes, now. I'm going now. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure to be here.
Let's go with one.
Okay, sure.
This gentleman's got his. So last question.
Thanks, Darpan, for speaking to us. Of late, there seems to be a lot of talk in the media of UFOs and aliens and whatnot. I'm just wondering what your take is on all that.
Okay, thanks. That's a really big question. I could go into that for at least an hour. But just quickly, look, as we are evolving, so the expanse and the breadth of our reality map is also evolving. At the moment, it's just on a linear level still. It's not on the quantum level that I was talking about and that I'm saying that we should step into. On the level of like human beings being fed information, I believe that those UFOs have been there all along. And it's only now that the powers that be within our kind of 3D space-time thing are going, well, maybe the humans are ready for this information now. Maybe they're not going to be totally freaked out if we tell them this now. And maybe it'll even serve our purposes for us to tell them about this now. But I can tell you, and you can do your own research on this, is that Hitler, Victor Schauberger, and all of his scientists towards the end of the war had cracked anti-gravity, had cracked free energy, and had built these spaceships, UFOs, that he called Hannibal 1, 2, 3, and 4. There was another one, I've forgotten the name of it. I've seen photographs of these Gestapo with, swastikas standing next to this UFO. And they also invented a thing called the Bell, which was purportedly a time machine. When Hitler realised he'd lost the war, that he was fucked, he got all of that information and destroyed it, and destroyed the evidence of the crafts. Then, contrary to popular belief, he didn't die in a bunker with Eva Braun. He was taken by U-boat across to Argentina and then to Antarctica. Now, by 1939, he'd already had a base in Antarctica that was fully operational. This is before the war. Because he really believed in the existence of Agartha, the inner Earth theory, that there were actually a civilization within the Earth that you can access from either of the poles. Now, I'm not arguing whether that's true or not. All I'm saying is that already then, they'd cracked free energy. And what happened then was that Admiral Byrd, in a thing called Operation High Jump, was commissioned by Eisenhower to go to Antarctica and root out this last enclave of Nazis, which he knew was there. And they went there with a whole flotilla of naval boats and thousands of Marines. And it was purportedly an exploration, to explore the South Pole. Why did they have thousands of Marines and lots of warships? So they went there, and they had 3 months to complete the operation. But they linked back there because when they came back to Eisenhower and said, fuck, he said, out of the water came these craft, out of the water. There were UFOs that decimated our entire fleet within 20 minutes with lasers and technology that was far in advance of anything that the Yanks had. And so they went, whoa, this is something else. And so then they sent Admiral Byrd back some years later with a white flag and going, we want to make friends, let's see what's going on here. And he was on a reconnaissance flight. This is in his own diary, which was only released after his death because he was sworn to absolute secrecy, but his grandson released the book, where he was doing a reconnaissance trip over Antarctica and his whole aeroplane was locked on, and it was suddenly they couldn't control the aircraft, but it was being directed inside. Apparently there's a hole a kilometre wide that you could go inside the Earth at the South Pole. And that's why you can't fly over there, by the way, just as an incidental aside. If there's a way to go from A to B straight across the poles, you have to fly around that way. They'll never let people over the pole. And also, if you go there with Google Earth, it's all blocked out. So anyway, having said that, he said in his own words that he was taken inside and that there was these advanced people, this advanced race, and that there were Germans there. But not just Germans, that there was some other race that were human-like that were there. I don't want to get into that. There's a whole theory around that, about the Anunnaki, but I don't want to get into that. But all I want to say is that already then, because Admiral Byrd said that they could travel from one pole to the next in 1 hour, and that their systems worked upon Mercury, rotating Mercury, and creating an electromagnetic field over the ship, the craft, which allowed them to move at incredible speeds. Now that was back in 47. You can imagine what they've done since then. I would say that 95% of the craft, UFOs that we see on the planet today, are actually man-made. They're done. They exist. Not only in Antarctica, but I believe the American government have got them. Russia, China. They're highly secret because they're still using. They're still squeezing the petrodollar out of the fossil fuels. Because free energy was discovered a long time ago. And they're just waiting to squeeze that last thing whilst making people feel guilty about the fact that they're using them. And then they go, oh, by the way, we've got this thing called free energy. Tesla was onto it ages ago. They took all of Tesla's work. It just disappeared. A large percentage of his work disappeared after he died. It was taken by the industrial military complex and put into practice. And so I would say that a lot of them are simply man-made. Because, when you think about a UFO, when you think about the multi-dimensions of a reality, when you think about the vastness of the universe, there could be a UFO right here that's smaller than my eye can see, that's operating around me right now, but I wouldn't see it, because you'd think, how can that be? But how long is a piece of string? What's big and what's small when you compare it to the vast size of the universe? Our planet is infinitesimally tiny compared to the galaxy, let alone the rest of the universe. How do we know that these UFOs or extraterrestrials are actually our size or coming in on this 3D space-time reality? Maybe they can come in interdimensionally, into our thoughts. I think that's much more worthy of investigation. Into the way we feel. Maybe that's the level they're communicating. And certainly I've seen them in visionary state. But they're not in this dimension. They are in another dimension, but they are operating and have just as real effect in this dimension as if they were here. To answer a question, I do think that there are probably physical extraterrestrials in our, maybe even our solar system, but certainly in our galaxy. Just the fact that we're the only ones in this vast plenum of stars, billions of stars, is just a ridiculous idea. However, for them to come here in the kind of technology that we're used to is virtually impossible. So either they're so technologically advanced that we can't perceive them, or they are still clunking around in metal machines like we are, and making themselves known maybe from, I don't know, some other planet on this solar system that is supporting life. I don't know the answer to that, but my answer to you is that I would say from my own experience that a large proportion of what we see is actually coming from this Earth itself, and that Antarctica is a great mystery, believe me. There's so much that's going to be coming out of Antarctica. I believe it's the ancient Atlantis. I believe that under that 3 kilometres of ice, since the last pole shift, that all went under ice. You can see on Google Earth a pyramid that's even bigger than the one in Cheops in Egypt. And it's clearly a pyramid. And people have discovered all kinds of... And when that melts, it'll be there as if it was like it was the day it iced over when the pole shift happened. Whereas, the pyramids in Giza and stuff have been weathered by the sands of time and wind and it's worn down, as is the Sphinx, but Antarctica is fresh. And I believe that it holds vast secrets that the powers that be know about, but are not willing to let go of, or are starting to trickle out, as in UFOs, to the general populace. But it's just a trickle.
All right, well, that was a